Hello, my name is Austin Schuler, and I will be discussing the North Sea and why it flooded in 1953 and the damage this flood caused. The North Sea is a marginal sea of the Atlantic Ocean. It is located primarily between the UK, Norway, and the Netherlands. On January 31st, 1953, many factors aligned and led to a very devastating flood. This flood would become one of the most iconic floods in history as its impacts were so severe. When the sea flooded, it impacted all of the countries that surrounded it, but England and the Netherlands suffered the most. As previously stated, this flood was a result of many factors combining and working together. There were three main components that enabled the North Sea to cause a massive amount of destruction. The first thing that enabled the flood was the spring tides. Whenever the sun, earth, and moon align to create a new moon, they also create higher than normal tides. These exceptionally high tides are called spring tides. The next factor that enabled this event were very high winds. The winds were observed to be a maximum of 126 miles per hour at the time of this flood. The last component to this event was climate change. This was one of the first times scientists suggested that climate change was a real issue and was endangering the safety and well-being of people. The oceans had risen some due to climate change, and these higher than normal oceanic levels were a problem. All three of these factors worked together during the flood. The strong wind blew the higher than normal oceanic levels that were caused by climate change and spring tides, and this created massive waves and storm surge. The areas that suffered the most from this flood reported an average storm surge of 2 to 2.5 meters, and some areas reported up to 3 meters of surge. Many of these coastal European areas had some barricades in place to protect against the sea, but they were not tall enough or strong enough to withstand the surge. England, for example, reported over 1,200 barriers failing and letting rushing seawater onto land. Some scientists and researchers were able to predict this flood because they could see all of the signs leading up to it, so they were able to evacuate thousands of people. However, not everyone was able to get to safety, as approximately 2,200 people lost their lives. The Netherlands were hit hardest by this storm, as over 1,800 people lost their lives in this country. Additionally, close to 600,000 acres of land were flooded, and of that, 160,000 were determined inundated with seawater and not usable for several years. This storm hit the economy of these European countries hard also. The flood caused an estimated 50 million pounds worth of damage. To put that into perspective, that equals 1.6 billion of today's US dollars. Thankfully, this flood is not something that happens regularly. It was a situation that occurred due to some factors that all aligned and made this flood possible. However, that is not to say that this is the only time the North Sea has tried to cause destruction. After this catastrophic event, many preparations and precautions were made to ensure that the North Sea would not flood to that degree again. More, stronger barriers were installed across coastal Europe, and the Storm Tides Warning Service was established to monitor the threat of other massive floods. However, no matter how many precautions we take to prevent floods, they're going to happen. Climate change does not help the matter, as it is a large factor that influences many floods. So this raises the question, will we begin seeing more of these destructive floods as our climate is altered? And if so, to what degree will they impact us? Thank you.